Welcome back to another reading and correcting with me, Kindar, the Tiger Writes, and Ty, the Tiger Supervisor. These are where I read a chapter from one of my stories and correct it as I go. If you want to listen to these live, it's every Tuesday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Time on Twitch. And if you're looking to support me, that is on my Patreon. Today we are doing chapter 12 of A Series of Death. Thank you for getting back to me, Trembor said, looking over the file on Arlon Shines. It had been a few days since he'd left her the message. Yeah, well, I wasn't sure I would. Whatever he's done, he deserves it. He's dead. She wasn't a suspect. As soon as he'd found her name within Arlan's files, he'd gotten an enforcer to run down her movement. And she'd been at work when the coyote died. But she might have information that would point Trembor to a suspect. Oh, can't say I ever expected he'd get himself eaten. He hasn't. He's an unclaimed body. I didn't do it. I was pissed at him, but not enough to let him rot. Your whereabouts have been verified, Miss Grace. I'm more interested in if you might know who might have if you know. I don't need two mights in here. I'm more interested in if you know who might have angered him enough for an argument to turn physical. Most cases of unclaimed bodies aren't premeditated, and the person who committed the crime typically runs because they're scared. You're looking for someone Arland angered? Have you looked into any of the meeting clubs? The male can't seem to help going there to pick up tail when he thinks no one's looking. That's why I dumped his ass. I wouldn't be surprised if half the females in those are pissed at him too. Big on making promises, Shines was. Trevor made a note about the clubs. Those were never fun to with an investigation. A lot of people, not all of whom wanted to admit they were there, alcohol and recreational drugs, and it made for a pool of people less than forthcoming with information. Thank you, Miss Grace. Say, since he's dead, am I going to get the survivor's benefits? Were you mated? No, as I said, big on promises, not so much on execution. Then you're going to have to check with the Revenue Bureau if you put you as the designated recipient. If not, it's going to the closest relatives, but that won't happen for a few weeks. I need to go through more of my investigation before anything will be released. Thanks, just like him to leave me with nothing. She disconnected, and Trevor brought up the list of meeting clubs in the cities, then narrowed that to the area where Arlen had lived. There were a lot of clubs catering to a variety of desires, from simply socializing to get to know new people to all manners of sexual quirks. Trevor knew at least one club that had predators who wanted to be bitten up by prey for some reason. He'd gone to some of the social ones in his youth before Gorek. After the lion, he'd never been comfortable with the idea of being around so many strangers, specifically looking to get to know him, pry into his life, maybe find out what he'd seen as his shame back then. He forwarded a list to the five closest to Arlen to house to dispatch so they could assign officers to go there and ask around. Trember liked being back within the enforcer environment, and the help they were willing to give him cut down a lot of the legwork he'd have to do. His pad buzzed with Torum's name appearing. Dad, what's wrong? His father had to have used the emergency bypass code to get around the family lock. Tremper kept on his pad while he worked. What is this I hear about your brother having gambling debt? Torum snapped. Tremper sighed. He should have known it wouldn't be an emergency. Well, not a real one, at least. Dad, don't give me that, Tremper. I'm not looking to get you to break that precious confidence of yours. Sarek already let that little tidbit about Bo asking him for a loan slip, and I got the full story from him. So you can tell me everything you know and not worry about it. Tremper chuckled. Know that? Even if I knew anything, I'm not telling you. His father might be an expert at playing witness and suspects. Now, Tremper had grown up with the male, had heard the stories, been cross-examined when his father thought he'd done something he shouldn't. He'd picked up enough to not to fall for his father's tricks, and to edge how he said what he did so Torum couldn't trick him. Trembor Golden Mane, I am your father, the master of this house. You will. Mom anywhere near within hearing range? Trembor cut him off. No, his father replied. It was disappointing that the question, as he proclaimed himself master of everything, no longer sent him into a fit of stutter and worries. As kids, it had been particularly satisfying, disarming their father this way when he was grilling one of them. While they definitely loved him, his mother wouldn't let his father delude himself into thinking he was in charge. Some of the arguments had been spectacular. Dad, whatever Bo might or might not have told me was done in confidence. I wouldn't tell Serene if she kicked down my door and demanded I do so. Reflexively, he looked at the door in case mentioning her brought his mother here, which was silly. She'd have to get through the enforcers first, and few of them knew her well enough to get out of her way. That brother of yours is gambling. Not only that, but in spite of my warnings, he went and got himself into debt at one of those places. Do you know what they're within their rights to do? They can take his car, his house. What's going to happen to Heralex and Isenson if they sue him for everything he's got? At least his father didn't know who his brother had owed money to. He didn't want to be around if that piece of information ever came out. Dad, it won't come to that. He tried to come up with something that wasn't a lie. His father wasn't the lie detector he loved to boast, but when it came to his children, the lion was too good. I'm sure we'll talk to a lending agency before it gets to that. Crooks didn't care where the money came from, did they? So he does owe money, Trembor exclaimed triumphantly. Trembor groaned. Really, Dad? I'm not a witness to cross-examine. This isn't the courts. The way you're covering up for your brothers. I'm not covering up, Trevor snapped. And you fucking know it. I'm the one person in this family the others come to and not be judged. Because our father just can't stop himself from bringing his job into the house and treating each and every one of us like some juvenile delinquent. And for your information, I did give Bo a piece of my mind about the stupidity of what he did. Happy now? Trevor growled, but didn't say anything. Look, Dad. Bo's being an idiot. I know it, you know it, and even he does at this point. Screaming at him isn't going to make him want to come to us for help. Certainly not after the way he'd lost it on his brother. As much as you want to protect us, there are times when we need to screw up to learn. Take it from me. The silence stretched. How are you, son? Torrin asked, his tone gentle. I hurt, he answered with a sigh. I can't stop thinking about him. And of course, because he's that kind of persistent asshole, Gorex claws his way out of my memories right after. How didn't I see the signs, Dad? I worked with that wolf for more than 3 years. Abusers aren't stupid. They're patient. They stalk and cajole until their claws are in you so deep you can't see a way out when the mask drop. From what you said, he didn't mean to show you his true sense. If it helps, even Serene didn't see it coming, and you know how your mother is about sniffing bad people out. I know, Trevor sighed. It's just that, fuck. After Gorek, I should have known better. You saw a chance at being happy. Don't hate yourself for wanting that. It's not your fault someone took advantage of it. I loved him, Dad. I loved him so much, Dad. Still did. Still want to hold this scared wolf, comfort him when he thought someone realized he loved another male, or when he pretended to be scared anyway. The act had been perfect. You are a loving male, Tremper. That isn't a flaw. Fucking feels like one right now. I know. But one day you'll find a male who loves you just as much, and you'll see it isn't. Tremper didn't want a male. I've looked into the contract, Tremper said. Dad! Tremper whined. Regardless of the lack of cancellation clause, I think that you can argue you were led to sign it under false pretense. An educator could be convinced that's enough. No, Dad, I'm not talking about this with anyone. Not now, not tomorrow, not ever. He can hold it over you, son. Legally, you are mates, and as such, he can make demands of you. Let him try. We'll see how much he enjoys my claws in his face. As much as he wanted to. He didn't think he had it in him to hurt the wolf. Thorim sighed. All right, it's your decision to make. I still write the brief in case you change your mind. Thanks, Dad. If you need to talk, I am able to listen without judging. Trevor chuckled. I know. Have a good day. He dug the charging plate out and set his pad on it. He looked at the screen, but saw Bo, Marlot, and Gorek instead of the files he needed to work on. How could he accuse his father of being judgmental when he did the same thing with Bo? Sure, the difference was Trembor knew Bo was in trouble with criminals, so his justifications were stronger, but he should have been more supportive. He tried to work, but they kept intruding in his thoughts. He shut down the system. He wouldn't be able to do anything about this, and nothing was urgent. And while he couldn't do anything about the wolf and lion that haunted his memory, Bo was a situation he could resolve. Shook his head when the captain raised the package of meat. Another thing about working at the precinct was there was always food available, even if you couldn't control the quality of the meat. Ah, what happened here? Come back here. In the car and with it running to remove the chill that had settled on the city, he realized he couldn't simply show up at his brother's work. He didn't know how that office worked, but a surprise visit would guarantee an argument. The call ended up with a message indicating he'd been blocked. Annoying, but he deserved it. He had to search through his list of contacts for the office number, and once he called them, he found out Bo wasn't in, hadn't come in at all. The male he spoke with didn't have access to the why he wasn't there. HR would know, he assured him before Trevor disconnected. That was odd. Trevor could count on one hand the numbers of days Bo hadn't gone into work, and all three were when his mate died. The stress? He drove to his brother's house. Showing up there unannounced was more acceptable. At least the issuing fight would be in the privacy of the house. Only, when he knocked, no one answered. He knocked louder. Was Bo ignoring him? He eyed the security camera. An angry Bo could be stubborn. His attention moved to the lock. Marlot would open it with ease, so could Trembor, but his method would piss off his brother more than he already was. He called, looking at the camera, and got the blocked message. He wrote a message and sent that, letting his brother know he was still at his door and wanted to talk, specifying he was only here to help him find a way out of his situation. The message went through, but his brother didn't open the door or reply. Okay, maybe this wasn't about him. Was Bo sick? Stress could cause that. So sick he couldn't check his pad or answer the door? He called Erelex. When he got him the message, his nephew would have an idea what was going on with his father. Uncle Trembor, the young male answered. What's up? Trembor looked at the time. Shouldn't you be in class? I was going to leave a message. I'm between them, heading to the fighting rings for some exercise. Is your dad okay? He isn't at work. I'm at your house and he isn't answering the door. If he isn't at work, I don't know where he is. I do know he's angry at you, called you an inconsiderate copy of Grandpa. I didn't ask for details. That was a good decision, Trevor said, chuckling. When will you be home? I'm not. I'm staying with Zern tonight. I'm not familiar with the name. Someone special? Just a guy I know. Trevor heard the shrug in the voice. A guy? Does that mean your heat's passed and Uncle? Trevor laughed. I'll butt out. Just make sure he treats you well. If he doesn't, that exercise I'm going through in the ring will come in handy. And about Dad, I think a female is what's keeping him busy. He asked me not to be home tonight for a few days. It's Wizerns. All right. Bo didn't have a reason to tell Alex why he wasn't at work. A female would explain it, though Bo had never put them before work. Stress again? The need to have something other than his troubles to think about? He shook his head. Something didn't feel right. Uncle? Sorry. I'll give you that space. I don't want to ruin his chance if he's looking to give you a mother. Alex groaned. I'm not a cub. I don't need a mother. He's the one who needs a mate. Don't we all? You okay? Trevor silently cursed himself for having said that out loud. I'm managing. Give your opponent a chance to get in a few blows. Not everyone's as fortunate as you to have a dozen females teaching him how to hunt. I'll be gentle, I promise. He disconnected. Trevor looked at the camera, at the door, then the camera, as he headed back to his car and entered a new number and put his bat to his ear. Uncle? His ensign exclaimed softly. Why aren't you in class? Class are still a thing, right? I am, he whispered, but I've done my assignment, and it's you. You need to make it quick. Miss Blacks is glaring at me. Where are you staying tonight? Uncle Sarek is picking me up after class. Dad's getting lucky. Era likes too. Trembor didn't think Bo was. Okay, tell your uncle to call me once he gets you home, okay? Okay, bye. His nephew disconnected. Now Trembor considered kicking the door in. If Bo was there and he did have a female, he'd deal with the ensuing fight. But one of the neighbor would see and call the enforcers. In his current state, Bo might press charges. Their dad might. Their dad would easily get one of his friends who still practice law to have them dismissed. Well, what? Their dad would easily get one of his friends who still practice law to have them dismissed. Practice law to get to have that. Well, to have that dismissed. But it didn't matter. This wasn't his territory. He wasn't investigating a body. If he kicked the door in, he'd be breaking and entering. He sent his brother a message. Bo, Trembor again. I talked to your sons. Pushing them away isn't like you. Call me and I will help. No lecturing, just help. Getting in the car, he wondered how deep his brother's trouble ran. If he was hiding out like Trembor suspected he was. He shuddered as he recalled some of the stories he'd heard in his time as an enforcer. What some criminals did with people who owed them too much. Served them, being forced to commit crime or blood drive, figuratively and literally in at least one case. Being vanished so completely the Missing Person Bureau wasn't even aware of it. Looked at his brother's house and hoped Bo's trouble didn't run that deep. And that concludes chapter 12 of a series of death. If you are enjoying this, please leave a like. If you want to know when the next chapter is going to be up, subscribe and hit the bell. If you want to read the whole story, as well as the other books in the series, they are available at all major e-retailers. If you're looking for a different way to support me, that is on my Patreon, where you can also get access to just about everything I've written. And if you want to listen to these live, it's every Tuesday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Time on Twitch. The links are in the notes. And with that, I shall wish you a good day.